1294, Yuan, China. In the capital of Dadu, known as Hanbalik for the Mongols, the conquerors roam proudly on horseback through the streets of the great city. The nation's elites, composed of Mongol nobles, Semu from all over the fragmented Mongol Empire, and some Han Chinese scholars, have their eyes fixed on the imperial palace. The Yuan dynasty's founder, Kublai Khan, or Emperor Shizu of Yuan, has died. It is time for a new leader to succeed him. In 1294, the Yuan dynasty was a powerful nation, nominally suzerain to all other fragments of the divided Mongol Empire. Its splendor was however threatened by a precarious financial situation, caused by immense military expenditure, as the state was still at war against the rebellious Chagatai Khanate and engaged in campaigns in Southeast Asia. The cost of the large administration of the empire weighed heavily on the treasury, and maintenance of lavish palaces further burdened the dynasty's coffers. Its society, though, was stable. The Mongols had established a strong social hierarchy in which they were on top, with the southern Chinese at the bottom. Trade was flourishing, and religious freedom was guaranteed. The Yuan dynasty's imperial system, unprecedented, was a balanced compromise between Mongol laws and customs and Chinese Confucian philosophy, which the late Emperor Kublai had gradually integrated. However, with his passing, it was time for the Mongol high nobility to choose a new leader. However much the late emperor favoured the traditional Chinese imperial system, the Great Yuan could not overrule its Mongol roots. His successor would be elected through a Huraltai, or Mongol council. The best candidate was evidently his grandson, Temür, the 24-year-old son of the late Crown Prince Genghis. A Buddhist like his grandfather, and proven general, Temür's health was however fragile due to alcoholism, a growing issue within the Mongol nobility. Nonetheless, he had received his late grandfather's approval. The young prince could also count on the help of his influent mother and the additional support of great figures such as the respected Temür, grandson of Genghis Khan and high-ranking official, and Boyan of the Barin, a heroic general who had subdued the southern Song dynasty. The throne was however not yet Temür's to take. Indeed, his elder brother Gamala also claimed legitimacy to succeed the late Kublai. The council was organised in Shangdu, the initial capital of the Yuan dynasty, on the 14th of April 1294. The support Temür received was enough to see him easily elected to become the new Mongol leader, as Gamala stood down. By an official edict, Temür was enthroned as the Yuan Emperor and Great Khan of the Mongol Empire on the 10th of May 1294. However, with the inheritance of power, the new monarch had also inherited all of its challenges. Temür was not Kublai, and his faction was well aware that without the loyalty of the Mongol princes, his rule would be crippled by internal obstacles and possibly plots against him. To solve the issue, the emperor made sure to offer or increase lavish grants to the Mongol nobility, increasing stipends of silver and gold twofold and fourfold respectively. This measure certainly earned their support, but aggravated the tenuous financial situation. With the political situation stable, Temür could begin his projects. The emperor intended to rule in the continuation of his grandfather's reign. Subsequently, most officials appointed by his predecessor remained in office. Many, such as Bohumul, a powerful official of Turkic origins yet educated in Neo-Confucian values, advocated further Confucianization of the Yuan dynasty. This was exactly in line with Temür's intentions. Soon, a new temple revering Confucius was built in Hanbalik, which still stands today. Furthermore, temporary national and regional tax exemptions were organized as Confucian policies of benevolence. These measures, beneficial in the short run for the people, however added pressure on the Yuan dynasty's coffers. In addition, although the fixed number of administration officials employed in the capital was supposed not to exceed 2,600, the official history of the Yuan reports that the court financed about 10,000 officials in 1294, nearly 4 times more. Moreover, the excess of officials did not improve the efficiency of the administration. Quite the contrary, officials took immense delays before settling internal affairs, a phenomenon attributed to procrastination, but mainly increasing corruption, which would continue to grow through the years. On the diplomatic side, the Yuan dynasty profited from the tributary system Kublai had established. It received tribute missions from the state of Taiviet, Champa, the Pagan Kingdom, and the Khmer Empire. In early 1296, Temür Khan dispatched a delegation to the Khmer Empire, which reached its capital of Angkor in August, in which official Zhou Daguan notably took part. During his extended stay of 11 months, Zhou Daguan would write an extensive description of society in the Khmer Empire, known as the Customs of Cambodia, the only known primary source about daily life in the empire. Ministers and princes are mounted on elephants, and in front of them one can see from afar their innumerable red umbrellas. After them come the wives and concubines of the king, in palanquins, carriages, on horsebacks and on elephants. They have more than 100 parasols flecked with gold. Behind them comes the sovereign, standing on an elephant, holding his sacred sword in his hand. The elephant's tusks are encased in gold. Although Temür Khan generally attempted to follow Kublai's footsteps, there was one domain in which he was more reserved in regards to his grandfather's policies: war. The Yuan emperor, by economic necessity or conviction, cancelled most projects to militarily expand further in Southeast Asia and scrapped a suggestion to launch a third invasion of Japan, the first two having been crushing disasters. Nonetheless, a punitive campaign was organised in 1300 to the vassal Burmese kingdom of Pagan. Indeed, trouble was brewing in the country as the Pagan dynasty was ending. The nominal king of the nation, Choswa, was losing power to 3 military mighty brothers who were powerful ministers, known as the Three Brothers. Subsequently, he sent his son to China to offer submission and loyalty to the Mongols, seeking their protection. In return, Temür Khan officially recognized him as king on the 20th of March 1297. This would not be enough to prevent his doom. The three brothers, growing confident, overthrew the king on the 17th of December 1297, establishing their Mianzang kingdom, and seemingly executed him later. With no reaction from China, the unchallenged three brothers went a step further and attacked and seized local Mongol garrisons in January 1300. Their arrogance could no longer be tolerated by the Yuan imperial court. A 12,000-man strong Mongol army was dispatched from Yunnan province and reached and assaulted the Burmese capital city of Mianzang in early 1301. However, the Burmese forces were able to hold on until they eventually bribed the invaders to withdraw. Once back in China, the Mongol commanders were promptly executed, but the Yuan court gave up its ambitions on Burma, the north of which was entirely lost by 1303. There would be one final campaign in Southeast Asia, as the Mongols would attempt the conquest of the kingdom of Lanna. Known in Yuan sources as Ba Bai Si Fu, the land of 800 wives, probably due to the fact that its villages were ruled by female chieftains. The emerging state had indeed expanded on Yuan-controlled land and subsequently given the Mongols the perfect excuse for an invasion. The Yuan court subsequently organised a 20,000-man strong army under General Liu Shen, which would rally in Yunnan. The preparations for this great expedition, however, weighed heavily on the ethnic Dai and Yi people and other minorities of southern China, from which army supplies were extracted, probably through brutal means. Consequently, tribal chieftain Song Longji agitated local communities, claiming the Yuan forces would levy the men, seize their properties, and take their wives. Order, which was already precarious in the region, promptly collapsed. Before long, the Yuan dynasty faced a large rebellion. Through skirmish and guerrilla tactics, Song Longji's rebel forces, familiar with the terrain, were able to rout the Yuan army from the region. As a result, the rebellion worsened for the Mongols, with many more tribes and communities joining the movement, notably including female chieftain She Jie. Their momentum was however not enough to counter the mighty Yuan dynasty. The imperial court promptly responded by sending troops from 4 provinces, which successfully crushed the rebellion by 1303. Song Longji and She Jie were defeated and executed, and order was brought back to China, but the invasion of Lan Na was cancelled. In contrast to the failures in Southeast Asia, Temür's reign would also see the end of a devastating protracted war within the Mongol states. The Haidu-Kublai War, a large conflict which had begun with the invasion of the Yuan dynasty by Külüg Khan, the cousin of the late Emperor Kublai and leader of the Chagatai Khanate. The Chagatai forces still regularly raided the border region. In 1299, Temür had appointed his nephew Khayishan to organize the defense of Mongolia from its capital, Karakorum or Karakorum. After much fighting in the Altai region, the war culminated in a great battle near Karakorum in September of 1301, ending in a costly victory for the Yuan dynasty. Külüg Khan died from wounds sustained during the battle, and with him the Chagatai Khanate's military Führer. By early 1304, an official peace agreement was brokered by his successors, and the dissident Khanate once again officially recognized the Yuan emperor's suzerainty over all of the Mongol Empire. The Yuan dynasty was at peace. However, internal problems flared up once more. A great scandal shook the court in early 1303 when evidence of a massive case of corruption emerged. The many implicated officials, which included some in the highest spheres of the government, were immediately reprimanded, dismissed or punished, but the case was only the tip of the iceberg. Outraged, Temür Khan launched a nationwide anti-corruption investigation campaign. Within several months, over 18,000 officials were found guilty of having accepted or given bribes, and many were subsequently stripped of their position. An opportunity to weed out corruption from the Yuan dynasty had appeared. However, due to lack of ambition, discouragement, or declining health, the emperor's momentum promptly fell apart. Within a few years, most corrupt officials were reinstated. Indeed, although in his late 30s, Temür was evidently losing his vigor, which raised the question of succession. The emperor had one young son, Deshao, officially through his late first empress Shirindari, who had died in 1299. Deshao was however possibly the son of Temür's second empress, Bulu Khan, elevated that same year. An ambitious woman, Bulu Khan gradually got involved with state affairs, even more so as Temür's health deteriorated, soon handling many issues on her own. In June 1305, Temür decided to officially designate his son as the crown prince, and to avoid the possibility of a succession struggle, potential rivals to the throne were promptly sent away from the capital, including Prince Ayurbarwada, another one of Temür's nephews who was sent to Huaizhou. Unfortunately, only a few months after his designation, the crown prince Deshao died in January 1306. The following year, on the 2nd of February 1307, Emperor Temür died in turn at 41 years old and without an heir. In the subsequent succession crisis, Empress Bulu Khan tried to cling on to power, forming a faction supported by some high-ranking officials. Together, they aimed to maintain her de facto position as a regent before placing the Prince Anand on the throne. Anand was a grandson of Kublai and the son of the late Mangala, from whom he had inherited the title of Prince of Anxi. A successful general who had crushed Chagatai invasions in Gansu province during the Haidu Kublai War, he also had generational seniority over other princes, making him a great candidate to the throne. However, in contrast with most of the Yuan nobility, Anand had converted to Islam, becoming quite devout. Reportedly, the late Emperor Temür had tried to convince him to return to Buddhism, without success. Finally, although his army in Gansu was large, his military influence in the capital was meagre. Another faction in the court supported the late emperor's nephews, Khayishan, who had defeated the Chagatai Khanate in Mongolia, and his younger brother Ayurbarwada, who had strategically been sent away from the capital to Huaizhou. Their candidacy to the throne was strong as well. The brothers descended from Kublai. Khayishan was also a celebrated general, at the head of the largest army of the empire, counting 30,000 men, and Ayurbarwada was approved of by the Chinese elite, being a literate prince and strict follower of Confucian policies. Above all, the brothers had the decisive support of Grand Councillor Kharkhasun, an influential official in control of much of the Yuan bureaucracy. In their raid, Kharkhasun purposefully delayed and sabotaged Empress Bulu Khan's schemes and facilitated their return to Khanbalik. On the 4th of April 1307, Ayurbarwada reached the capital, stormed the palace and arrested Empress Bulu Khan and Anand, who were soon executed, before assuming control. The issue was however not yet settled. Indeed, the situation had now shifted towards a Tolway civil war-like scenario, with Khayishan in Mongolia and Ayurbarwada in China, both aiming to claim the throne. Such a devastating conflict had to be avoided at all costs. Through their mother Dagi, and since both brothers were fond of each other, it was agreed that Ayurbarwada would renounce power in favour of his elder brother Khayishan, who would become the new emperor. In return, the former was made the heir apparent. Khayishan, alongside much of his army, left from Mongolia to Shangdu, where he was enthroned on the 21st of June 1307 in a symbolic Khureltai. History would record him as the Yuan Emperor Wuzong, or Külüg Khan. Although he had received a Confucian education in Khanbalik alongside his brother, Khayishan never embraced its philosophy. Starting a pattern that would mark the rest of the Yuan dynasty, he reversed his Confucianist predecessors' policies, embracing a more traditional Mongol way of ruling. Grand Councillor Kharkhasun was sent to Mongolia, and the new emperor would rely mainly on loyal retainers that had accompanied him to the capital, largely dismissing or ignoring the established government. Khayishan also granted lavish titles and powerful positions to a great number of Mongol princes, to the detriment of the treasury. Furthermore, the emperor bestowed honorific titles to Buddhist and Taoist clergymen, and even theatre actors, an art which was flourishing under the Yuan dynasty. The new emperor would also prove to be an ambitious builder. Indeed, he financed the construction of Buddhist temples in Khanbalik and Shangdu. But more than this, motivated by personal prestige, as well as in a strategic move to place the seat of power closer to Mongolia, Khayishan aimed to build his own new capital city. Only 10 days after his enthronement, he launched the construction of Zhongdu, meaning central capital. Its palace would be completed by July 1308. That same year, the Yuan dynasty finally subdued the Ainu clans of Sakhalin Island, adding this region to its territory. However, Khayishan's reckless spending immediately brought practical obstacles to his reign. The huge construction projects, gifts and grants to the princes and loyal officials, and vastly swollen administration instantly burdened the treasury. Furthermore, paper money, introduced during Kublai's reign, had been mass-printed in the past years to finance the many different projects, contributing to a catastrophic inflation which reached about 80%. Consequently, in late 1309, the government launched the New Deal's policy. As part of the measures taken, A historical and unpopular institution known as the Shangshushang, or Department of State Affairs, was revived with the objective of increasing revenue. In addition, much more valuable banknotes with an exchange rate with the old currency of 5-1, called 制大银钞, were printed in large numbers. Silver and gold were demonetized in order to strengthen the value of paper currency, but copper coins were minted for the first time during the Yuan Dynasty as a complementary currency. To further relieve the treasury, the ban on alcohol was lifted and a liquor tax implemented. Taxes cancelled by Temür were re-established and the ones already in place were augmented. Salt licenses for the trade of salt, which was under the government's control, had begun being sold under Temür's reign. Khayishan, however, increased their prices by 35%. However, very little was done to reduce government expenditure. Although these policies allowed the state to avoid bankruptcy, inflation soared further and prices rose everywhere. Khayishan's reign attracted the ire of Confucian officials who submitted criticizing memorials to the court. Nevertheless, his faction's grip on state affairs was absolute. He would, however, not remain long in power. Indeed, the Yuan dynasty's throne was about to change hands once more. On the 27th of January 1311, after less than 4 years on the throne, Khayishan suddenly died at the age of 29 years old. The late emperor had 2 sons to succeed him, Restless or Kusala and Tovshuur, and they would indeed both one day reign. However, Khayishan's younger brother, Ayurbarwada, would inherit the throne before them, honouring the agreement made in 1307. Upon assuming power, the new de facto leader immediately took matters into his own hands, not waiting for his official enthronement. Only 3 days after his brother had died, Ayurbarwada dissolved the newly established institutions, violently purged the government, and reversed nearly all policies implemented by Khayishan. Unlike his elder brother, Ayurbarwada had completely embraced the Confucian philosophy they had both been educated in. Ever since he had assumed his first responsibilities in Huaizhou, the Mongol prince had surrounded himself with an entourage of Han Chinese scholars, officials and artists. To form the new government, in addition to some Mongol and Semu high-ranking officials, many Confucian Chinese scholars were appointed, including 16 elders that had once served in Kublai's government. On the 7th of April 1311, Ayurbarwada was formally crowned as Emperor and Great Khan of the Mongol Empire. He would be recorded as Yuan Emperor Renzong and Buyantu Khan. The Confucian monarch, going one step further than Kublai had, officially re-established the imperial examination, a historical Confucian-based civil servant examination, in 1313. Nonetheless, to compromise with Mongol rule, the Yuan dynasty's strict social hierarchy was transposed onto the examination, as the Mongols and the Semu were privileged with easier examinations and better official positions for equivalent ranking compared to Han Chinese students. It nonetheless gave an unprecedented chance for the southern Chinese to ascend the social ladder and forced Mongol and Semu students to acquire a Chinese culture. In addition, Ayurbarwada oversaw the translation of many Chinese books, including Confucian classics, into Mongolian. The ambitious monarch further intended to compose a Yuan legal code, as the laws of the dynasties had so far never been compiled into one document. This great endeavour would require 5 years, and the code's review and official promulgation would not take place for an additional 7 years. Aiming to cut down the immense public spending developed by his brother, the new leader greatly trimmed the administration, as many supernumeraries were removed from their positions. Most public construction projects were halted, including the massive construction of the city of Zhongdu, or scrapped off entirely. Nonetheless, these measures were not enough to restore prosperity to the empire. Despite removing many excess officials from office, the administration was still greatly swollen. The lavish grants to the Mongol nobility, which the new emperor failed to reduce as they were necessary for its support, further burdened the economy of the empire. To solve these problems, the Yuan dynasty decided to increase revenue through taxes. Nonetheless, increasing or adding new taxes on the population was out of the question. Subsequently, the government planned to search for undeclared landholdings concealed to avoid taxation. There were indeed reports of rich landowners hiding the true extent of their estates. In late 1314, landowners in the provinces of Jiangzhou, Jiangxi and Henan were given 40 days to report the exact size of the land they owned or face severe punishment if failure to comply or lying. The program was clever, but events would not unfold as planned. Indeed, corrupt officials, bribed by some landowners, agreed to overlook their estates, and ruthless administrators violently repressed poorer peasants. As a result of this injustice, resentment against the local Yuan authorities skyrocketed. By mid-1315, unrest would escalate into a complete peasant rebellion. A native of Jiangxi region, Cai Wuzhou managed to rally thousands of resentful and desperate men and besieged the county of Ningdu. The Yuan reacted promptly, breaking the siege by July. However, the rebels managed to capture the county of Ninghua, establishing a small rebel kingdom. It took several weeks before the powerful Yuan forces were able to crush it and execute Cai Wuzhou on the 5th of September. This fiasco convinced the Emperor Ayurbarwada to ease the agricultural policies, cancelling the operation, and even exempting the region from tax entirely in 1316, relieving the struggling peasantry, but worsening the dynasty's financial situation. The many obstacles faced by the Confucian emperor were only increasing. In addition to a corrupt administration and hostile traditionalist Mongol nobility, Ayurbarwada faced problems within his own imperial court. Indeed, his policies were undermined by a shadow faction in the government, stemming from his own mother, the Empress Dowager Dargi. Leading the anti-Confucian faction, she arranged for her champion Temür, a power-hungry Mongolian official, to be appointed as senior Grand Counselor. As the Empress Dowager's hand, Temür sabotaged many of the emperor's endeavours, and further dismissed several officials, appointing anti-Confucian administrators in their stead. Ironically, due to his profound Confucian filial piety, Ayurbarwada never openly opposed his mother's actions, allowing the situation to gradually deteriorate. The factional struggle culminated in summer 1317, as 40 Confucian officials and ministers assembled evidence of Temür's corruption, tyranny and extortion, giving the emperor the occasion to get rid of him. However, because of Empress Dowager Targi's protection, Temür was merely dismissed from office. The internal conflict of the imperial court was not helped by renewed military tensions. In the past few years, conflict had risen up once more between the Yuan dynasty and the Chagatai Khanate. Its Khan, Esen I, grew concerned of the important Yuan garrisons along the border region, and the potential alliance between the enemy Ilkhanate of Persia and the Yuan dynasty. After intercepting and executing a Yuan envoy to the Ilkhanate, Esen I attacked the empire's borders in early 1314. Betrayed by the defection of a military commander, his war plans were however leaked to the local Yuan garrisons, who subsequently easily outmaneuvered the Chagatai leader. After these events, a ceasefire was agreed, but Esen promptly broke his word and attacked the Yuan once more. This time, Ayurbarwada, outraged, ordered all garrisons to sweep the Chagatai forces, who lost great portions of their territory. By 1318, Esen I died, and was succeeded by his brother Külüg, who rapidly re-established peace with the Yuan. The external situation was stabilized, but there would be no rest for the emperor. The despotic Temür, right-hand man of the Empress Dowager, came back into the picture. As he secured and strengthened his position, Ayurbarwada was gradually losing control of his government. The emperor spent the last few months of his reign struggling to keep his remaining influence and died on the 1st of March 1320 at 35 years old. His reign is regarded as the most Confucian period of the Yuan Dynasty, although his policies were crippled by opposition in the imperial court. The Yuan Dynasty was in a precarious situation. Within the last 3 decades, the financial situation had evolved from impractical to critical, and the internal struggles between the Confucian and traditionalist Mongol factions had torn the court apart. The empty throne of the dynasty would be filled by Ayurbarwada's 18-year-old son, Shadbal, made crown prince in 1316, whom the now Grand Empress Dowager Tagi and Tomdor aimed to use as a puppet. However, young Shadbal was determined to rule of his own accord. Could he save the Yuan dynasty? Thank you for watching my video, I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or requests, feel free to leave them in the comments section below.